Hey everybody, welcome to the Concealed Carry Podcast. This being Season 3, Episode 9. I have Matthew here with me today.
Yes, sir.
Hello, sir.
What's going on, man?
It's busy day, of course.
Always.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still kind of playing catch up from being gone for a few days to go compete at the USPSA Area 1 Championship.
Yep, you were competing for the was it 2 days? Last 2 days, right?
Shot over, actually, all the shooting was done over 3 days.
3 days.
3-day match.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. You know, it was fun to travel to Washington State and see some dear friends of mine. I got to spend some time with my uncle who lives up not too far from where this range is located. He actually came out and watched me shoot on one of the days, and yeah, it was fun. It was a great trip. I mean, I didn't do as well as I would have liked at the match. I suppose we could say that for just about any competitive event we do. We could probably always say it didn't do as well as I'd like. I'll probably be saying that to the day that I win something big, and then we'll probably still say, "Well, I could have done this and this better." But no, it was a challenging match. There's no doubt about that. There was a lot of people that would agree with me on that point. I would say probably the most challenging match that I've ever shot. Even more so than nationals last year. Just there was some. I'm being diplomatic in how I say some of this because I could say some other things about some of the stages, but let's just say they were very challenging.
Noted.
Anyway, yeah. There were some high-level competitors that were not particularly happy with some of the stages either. So. Some, including some that who some of you, some names you might recognize, and you might be surprised at how poorly some of those people did.
Yeah. I think I'm picking up what you're putting down. I got you.
It was tough. It was challenging. And there's some fun stuff though too. Like there was this roller coaster stage, like literally like you ride down this car on wheels on a track, and got 15 paper targets, USPSA targets, plus one steel target you have to shoot. The steel target was actually what started the car moving on the track. So that was kind of cool. So you shoot that target, and then the car starts going, and like at that after that, from that point forward, you are at the mercy of that rail car. As far as like it's gonna go pretty fast, and like you got one chance to shoot everything pretty much. So I actually did enjoy that stage, and I shot it pretty well. I did have a miss or two on it, which was unfortunate, but I shot it. I had the fastest time on that stage, so that helped a little bit. It was fun.
Cool.
But stages like that, honestly, probably shouldn't be done at area championships, because the problem is you get some measure of variability in a stage equipment or stage prop like that, including like you have some shooters that weigh more than others, and that may result in them gaining more momentum going down, something like that. And that could, depending on the shooter's skill, could be an advantage or a disadvantage, right? Like some really high level shooters would want it to go faster so they could shoot everything faster, and it would enhance their performance. And others may not be quite ready for that level of speed, and so it would disadvantage them. They wouldn't be able to shoot things as well because it's moving faster for them, or that kind of thing.
Sure.
So fun. It's kind of like it'd be cool as like a side match thing or at a local match, but not sure if it was appropriate for an area championship. Anyway, well, Mark, disappointed I'm out of uniform. Yeah, I'm repping my buddy Chris Bean's training company, Tactical Advantage. He's a good friend of mine out of the Portland, Oregon area. So anyway, let's get this show on the road. Today is news and gear reviews, so we got a bunch of great stories to share with you, plus a couple of gear reviews. So stay tuned; it'll be fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
And we'll announce giveaway winners and all that
if we remember.
All righty, in 3, 2, 1. This is the Concealed Carry Podcast, Season 3, Episode 9. And welcome to Concealed Carry Podcast, part of the concealedcarry.com network, brought to you by XS Sights. Today is Wednesday, August 11th, 2021. As of the recording of this show, I am your host, Riley Bowman, and I'm joined today by Matthew Maruster.
Hello, hello.
Hey, buddy.
Glad to be here with you.
I'm happy to have you. Today is a news and gear reviews episode. So we will cover some of the latest news from around the firearms and concealed carry industries. And we'll also share with you later in the episode a couple of product reviews that Matthew and I have each selected. We've each chosen one product to review and share with you. So, yeah, looking forward to it. It'll be a great episode. We got some stories. We're going to talk about Missouri, Washington, Mexico, a story out of California, and a company getting sued because of something that's not their fault. Actually, there's a couple of stories today of companies getting sued for stuff that's not necessarily their fault. But I'm excited to get into some new product releases, new guns. I guess in the case of one of them's not necessarily one of them's not really a new gun, but it's something that's being adopted by a major law enforcement agency. The other one is also not like a whole, total new gun design, but some new updates to a popular current design I think some people will be interested in. But there's word about something new and exciting on the horizon from Camber. So stay tuned for that. Today's episode sponsored and brought to you by XS Sights. XSSights.com. We've talked about them many times on this podcast. They are our title sponsor of the Concealed Carry Podcast. Matthew, I'd like to hear a little bit more from you regarding XS Sights. I'm putting you on the spot. Tell us, whether it's what's your favorite thing or something that maybe not people, or something that people don't maybe know about XS Sights, or anything you want to share about XS Sights.
Yeah, well, XS Sights, a lot of people are familiar with the Big Dot sight. That's kind of their claim to fame, or the initial sight that a lot of people heard about XS Sights. It's a big front dot with that kind of a different way of looking at the rear sights, kind of like a V almost with the vertical line, and you kind of put that dot right on top of the line there. So that's what a lot of people are familiar with. But I know I have a set, and I know you do too. Their F8 sights are really nice. They're more of a traditional, notch in front sight, and they come in a couple different configurations as far as blacked out rears and a diminished rear sight. But the tritium is the same as their Big Dot. So they're known for having a nice bright tritium. And so, if you're looking for night sights and you've seen the Big Dot and you don't really, care for a super large, and not super large, but larger than probably what you're used to, front sight, maybe check out the F8 sights if you haven't seen those. They're probably more in line with what you're traditionally using on your sight, or on your gun. So I would definitely, if you haven't seen their website in a while, head over to XS Sights and check out their new line of sights. Not new, but maybe new to you.
Yeah, their newest product is the R3D night sights, which is something that's probably a little bit more familiar to many gun owners and shooters, with a more traditional 3-dot type arrangement versus the F8s that are more like a figure 8 style in terms of, at least with the tritium vials, the tritium portion of those sights, the dots are going to be stacked upon each other in the F8s. And the R3Ds, they're horizontal, right? I really like the F8s. They're my favorite. R3Ds, I did quite a bit of testing with. They're both excellent. And yeah, it just kind of depends on what you want and what you're looking for. So check them out, guys. xssites.com. One big thing is those are made in the United States of America. Both the sites themselves are machined and manufactured right in XS Sites plant, and they are one of the few manufacturers in the world, actually, that are certified and licensed or whatever. Like, it's actually because they got to handle tritium, which is actually technically a radioactive substance. So they have a whole, like, talking to one of the executives at the company, and he's like, I can't even go in the room where they make the sites and assemble the tritium and everything. Like, you got to have special training and like nuclear engineering degrees or something to do that. So anyway, kind of cool. Cool in that they make everything in their own manufacturing facility. So that's really cool. They own it, they make it, they QC it. Great stuff, high quality product, and good people over there representing good Americans everywhere making sites. So today's other episode sponsor is CCW Safe. CCWSafe.com is the place to go to learn more about their coverage. I've been a member of CCW Safe for a few years now, a member of their Ultimate Plan. I have their Ultimate Member Challenge coin right here. It's kind of cool. I think they send that to every Ultimate member now. But guys, whether it's the Ultimate Plan or the Defender Plan or the Protector Plan, which is available for law enforcement and military, they have something for everybody, okay, with the exception of a couple of places like Washington State and New York State. But great program for legal coverage in the case where you use deadly force. The thing that I appreciate most about CCW Safe is they back up their members like nobody else in the industry that I'm aware of. And that's proven in their actual cases that they've defended. Most notably the Stephen Maddox case. And you can go look that up. Search Stephen Maddox, CCW Safe, and read all about it. They have a multi-part series about that case and everything that went on with regards to that case, and what CCW Safe, together with Stephen's attorneys, worked really hard to do to ensure that these trumped up charges were not going to stand against a good man. So CCW Safe, guys, to learn more. And podcast listeners, use the coupon code CCPodcast to save 10%. All right, let's get into our stories. So the first story is, I'm going to throw this one your way, Matthew. Missouri governor pardons gun-waving St. Louis couple. This is the McCloskey couple. This is according to a WashingtonTimes.com article. Tell us what's the story here.
Yeah, everybody remembers the McCloskeys, right? Mark and Patricia. They had the nonviolent protesters marching across their lawn or whatever, and ended up brandishing some firearms. And I say nonviolent because in the article, one of they eventually pled guilty to a lesser charge. They charged them initially with some felony gun charges, and Patricia and Mark pled out to misdemeanor charges. And in the case, in the court proceedings, they said that they couldn't find any indication that any of the people that were on their property knew that they were there illegally or were violent or made any threats. And that's why I say a nonviolent crowd. The McCloskeys obviously saw it differently, and that's why they came out of their house with their with an AR-15, or I think it was an M16, and a handgun. Patricia had like a little handgun. Anyways, they The Missouri governor, Mike Parson, said from the beginning he is going to, even if they were charged and found guilty of whatever, that he would pardon them. And last Tuesday, he came through and pardoned them. So Patricia McCloskey pled guilty to misdemeanor harassment. She was fined $2,000. And Mark McCloskey pled guilty to a misdemeanor 4th-degree assault. He was fined $750. Both of them are attorneys, and neither one of them lost their law licenses because they were misdemeanor charges and not felony charges. So they still have their law license. One of the things that I thought was interesting was Mark McCloskey after the they pled out and then were later pardoned. Mark McCloskey, he announced back in May that he was running for U.S. Senate. And so after the plea hearing at that point, he says, they ask him, what do you think about this plea bargain and all this? And he says, I do it again. He said, anytime the mob approaches me, I'll do what I can to put them in imminent threat of physical injury, because that's what kept them from destroying my house and my family. So we obviously have two different sides of a story. I'll let you guys decide what you think about that, but it's a good thing they were pardoned, and I personally think that they should have been. So
I think this was a story with a couple in their home that had a situation very uncomfortable. It would be uncomfortable for any of us if we were to place ourselves in their shoes. Particularly, you're in a more upscale neighborhood. And my understanding was this was gated and the protesters forced their way in or something like that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on that fact, but I seem to recall that. This has been a while ago now. But regardless, you have a massive assembly of protesters marching down your street, and you've seen all in the news over the last year, protests getting out of hand, turning into riots, property damage being the norm for many, many places, especially in the St. Louis area. Like the St. Louis itself saw a lot of riot-related violence all through, or throughout parts of the year 2020. So that's the context. I think you had a man and a woman here, husband and wife, that were placed in a situation that was very uncomfortable and probably scary for them. But I also think they got caught up in that fear and the emotions of the moment, and probably and also were not particularly well prepared for how to handle themselves in such a situation, nor were they prepared particularly with their gun handling skills and safety, right? Mm-hmm. You remember how Mrs. McCloskey, Patricia, I think it was her name, was waving the gun kind of every which way with her finger on the trigger the whole time. Now, supposedly it wasn't actually loaded, or it wasn't actually a functioning gun, or this or that, but that doesn't really matter. The display of the lack of handling skills was rather atrocious. I think it was an unfortunate situation on both sides, right? I think that if you are not actually, and I'm speaking from the perspective of the protesters, if you're not actually there to hurt them, if you're not carrying weapons, if you're not committing violence, then nobody should have guns pointed at them unnecessarily. At the same time, these were just two people trying to mind their own business in their own home on their property, and all of a sudden hundreds of people making all kinds of racket and noise start marching through their neighborhood. I just think it's an unfortunate situation all the way around. And the lesson to be learned is, let's be a little bit better prepared ourselves. Let's recognize the fact that this sort of thing could happen based on what we've seen in the last year and a half, could happen in just about any neighborhood. So prepare yourself, okay? If a protest or riot comes to a street near you, then have an action plan and know how to follow it, and have good tactics and gun handling and whatever else might be required of you. Let's go to our next story from crosscut.com. Never been on this site. This is an interesting one. And actually, I when I first started reading the article, it was one of those things where I thought this could go one way and I could totally end up hating this article. Turns out I did not hate this article. Overall, I thought where this is going to go was going to be, more gun control kind of thing, right? Because the title of the article is "Suicide is Washington State's Biggest Gun Violence Problem." That's a catchy title, right? And then the subheading is "Two prevention experts debunk myths about suicide and explain what we can do to decrease these deaths." Again, I'm reading this. I'm like, well, this is probably going to talk about how we need more gun control and all this stuff. I'm just going to summarize it. And in the conversation's one we've had before, and it's a good conversation to continue having in our community, folks. But let's just recognize it is a well-known statistic that a large chunk of gun-involved deaths in our country are suicides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a reality. It's a reality that we have to understand and be okay with. I mean, as far as like it's not a lie. I'm not giving you fake news in saying that. And I think most of you understand that, yeah, this is a thing. There's I don't remember the exact number, but I think I seem to recall somewhere around 15,000, it's 12, let's say 12 to 15,000 ish suicides in the US each year that are done by a firearm. That's a bunch, and it's a tragedy. Chances are many of you listening to my voice right now or viewing us on Facebook or YouTube know somebody that has committed suicide with a gun. I've known somebody that has committed suicide with a gun, and it is a tragedy, and it's a terrible one. So the conversation is an important one to have. So after this article talks about, after it talks about the statistics surrounding gun suicides, which I am not entirely certain if I should have dug a little bit deeper on this. Like they say, nationally, 61% of all gun deaths are suicides. That doesn't quite jive with what I recall, but it doesn't. In the context of what we're talking about, it doesn't really matter in terms of the truth is there are a lot of deaths each year that are gun related suicides. So, the article then goes on to basically talk about, and I'm going to quote this section. I thought this was probably one of the better parts of the article, and it recognizes and they actually quote from, or they reference David Yamane, who at Wake Forest University, who's a really good dude. He has a blog he calls Gun Culture 2.0. It's a great blog. David Yamane has kind of an outsider's perspective. I mean, it started as him being a non-gun owner to now he is a gun owner, and he kind of shares his story of this journey of becoming a gun owner and involving himself more and more in the industry and in the culture. And he coined the term Gun Culture 2.0, referencing how gun culture has changed. You could say, I suppose, Gun Culture 1.0 would be the more Elmer Fudd-like gun culture, right? The old-time stuff, where back in the 60s, 70s, we weren't really having conversations about concealed carry and gun control. We were having conversations about hunting and hunting conservation and conservation rights and so forth. Anyway, referencing Dr. David Yamane, or Yamane, depending on how you want to pronounce it, says that efforts to keep people safe from guns need not preclude efforts to keep people safe with guns, especially when an estimated 40% of households in the U.S. have firearms. People at risk of firearm suicide typically own firearms already. That's why we've called out statistics in the past that talk about, how if you have a gun in your home, the rate of injury or death by a gun in your home like substantially increases. Well, it's like, well, duh, that's a silly statistic, because obviously if you don't have guns in your home, like, you're not going to have gun-related injury in that home. Many of us own guns and have guns in our homes, so obviously there's the potential for risk there. It's one that can be easily and reasonably managed. But anyway, but the point here is they say, therefore, efforts to reduce this risk necessarily focuses on education, training, and culture change among firearm owners to promote safety from suicide. And I think that's a worthwhile thing to pursue. And I think that's exactly the path that we need to be on. So what I'm saying there is that when we talk about changing culture, we need to change the attitude. And I would say in a broader sense, just regarding suicide in general and mental health in general, it's okay to reach out and ask for help, right? Like a big fear is that people will be judged, or people are afraid too that they're going to have their guns taken away if they have a bout of mental health struggles. People are afraid to even do something as simple as, hey, dear friend or family member of mine, can you come and just take my guns for a while? It's not good for me to have them in my home right now during this time because of what I'm going through, right? So like changing that and destigmatizing that attitude and the culture surrounding mental health and suicides and guns, like, this is something I'm all for and I'm all about.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I thought this was an interesting article because, as gun owners, we're always quoting, how oftentimes guns are used to protect life. And the reason why we carry firearms is, to protect life, and that we value life. And those are, values that a lot of people that possess firearms, those are a lot of values that a lot of people have. And then, but when this subject comes up and it says 61% of people who commit suicide, or 61% of gun deaths are with firearms, we kind of push it away, right? And we don't want to address it because we think somehow by addressing that, then we're pro gun control or something. I don't know. It's the same phenomenon that happens with, responsible gun storage, right? As soon as somebody starts talking about responsible gun storage and not wanting kids to come across, loaded weapons that are unsecured in the home, all of a sudden, it's well, you want to ban guns or something, right? So I think that we have to address this in within the gun community, and I hate that, but the culture does need to change. We need to be able to help one another and address these things. And if you know somebody, you said somebody, I unfortunately I have somebody in my family member, a family member who died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. I have a couple buddies that ended up dying, committing suicide with firearms. And so I think it's a real thing. And, we can talk about the pandemic and all this stuff and anxieties and depression, but it's a real thing. And so if if you're on your own, if you're listening to this and you're on your own, you have firearms and you're afraid that somebody's going to come and take your firearms away. If you say, you know what, I feel a little depressed, you got to start by having a couple people in your close vicinity that you trust, that you can talk to, that can come in and say, hey dude, let me hold on to your firearms. Let me lock them up. If you have a family member, do those responsible things. one of the quotes in here, I thought it was really interesting. We often say, like, if somebody's going to kill themselves, they're going to just do it. And this article, and like you, I didn't dive into these and try to fact check these statistics, but it says more than 90% of people who live through a suicidal crisis do not go on to commit suicide, right? So, or die by suicide. So, if you stop them in that, initial, kind of manic state where they're willing to do that. If they stop, this is saying 90% probably won't go through that crisis, and commit suicide, right? Again, and obviously, there are many different ways you can commit suicide, but a firearm is pretty much a irreversible. When you commit suicide with a firearm, it's probably going to be completed, right? A lot of drug overdoses, people take drugs to try to kill themselves. Those are not usually, but oftentimes reversed, right? People intercede or intervene and get them to the hospital, or their body, they vomit it up. And so we just need to be real with this. And I think that we just can't be tiptoeing around and be scared to talk about this, because it's an issue. 61% of gun deaths are from suicide. That's something we got to address. I think so.
Well, yeah, and yes, and yes. But again, I think overall, we as a society need to just do a better job with mental health. And,
for sure.
And treating people with suicidal thoughts and tendencies to begin with. Like the issue, the danger here, and what it often leads to, is that the gun becomes the focus.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the symptom. That's not the cause. Like it's deeper than that. It's the mental health piece of this. The gun is just a tool. And the article with some, there's some myth busters here, a couple of experts that say, a common thing is people say, well, if they don't have a gun, they'll just find another way to commit suicide. And they're saying that that's a myth. I mean, here's the thing. Japan has a high rate of suicide by train compared to other developed countries, because they have a lot of trains. It's a main method of transportation. And it's also kind of, I think there's almost like a pop culture piece of it too. Like one person does it, other people are like, that seemed like that worked, and so I'm going to try that too, or hey, that's a heck of a way to go out. I'm going to jump in front of a moving train, So I think every country and every society has their own various challenges, especially, where it comes to mental health and suicides. People find different ways of getting the job done when they are desperate enough to do so. But it would be, we would be remiss if we disregard the fact that a gun is incredibly effective, right? And thus there's a high rate of success. So that is the danger part here. And that's why we as gun owners should not be afraid to reach out and ask for help. That goes both ways. If we're the one that's struggling, reach out to someone that we care for, that cares for us, a friend, a trusted advisor, a coworker, whatever it is, and ask for help. On the converse, the flip side of that, check in with people that you're concerned about, or that haven't been quite themselves lately, or whatever it is, and just see how they're doing. And if it's known that guns are, that person's a gun owner, like, don't be afraid to ask, like, can I help you out? If you're in a really bad, dark place, can I take possession of your guns for a time? Now, there's a problem with that in some states, and this is one that frustrates me a lot with the state of Colorado, with our universal background check law passed a number of years ago now, that prohibits transfers to, private party transfers without going through background checks. And that's a problem, I say, because usually when there's a moment of crisis, we need to take action right then. We don't have time, and it may be too much of a burden, and therefore suppress the effectiveness of me saying, "Hey, buddy, let me come and grab your guns." That's pretty simple and straightforward, and we can get that done. We can get that done in the next half hour, right? But hey, let me take your guns, but we got to go down to the dealer and run a background check on everything, and that the additional hassle of that, so we can comply with the law, is going to be its own deterrent to pursuing that as an option. Apparently, there's a clause in the Washington state law that permits that sort of thing to be done. But technically, per Colorado state law, if I was to take my buddy's guns in an effort to save him, I'd be actually taking unlawful possession and transference of those guns without going through the proper channels. So unforeseen consequences of certain laws being passed, laws that weren't needed in the first place, but whatever. Not the scope of this discussion here today. We need to move on. We got a bunch of stories still to cover. Let's go now to Mexico. Mexico sues U.S. gun makers in unprecedented attempt to stop weapons crossing border. Matthew, what's going on here?
Yeah, so Mexico sues Smith & Wesson, Barrett Firearms, Colt Manufacturing Company, Glock, and Ruger. And what the Mexican government is claiming is that these gun manufacturers know that their firearms are being trafficked across the border into Mexico and being used in murders and in crime organizations, right? So it is illegal for them to take these firearms across the border, and in Mexico you can't have firearms in general, right? So there are firearms, of course, that are traveling south of the border, and there are drugs that are traveling, right? The border is porous for illegal things going back and forth, right? All different kinds of things. And so these crime organizations get firearms from the United States, transport them into Mexico. And because only, the police and, the cartels have firearms, you have some issues where nobody can defend themselves, and there are a lot of murders, kidnappings, and all kinds of stuff. I'm sure you know. So Mexico is saying that these companies are openly, knowingly selling these firearms and not regulating the people who they sell them to, the distributors, and know that the distributors are illegally selling them to people who are then transporting them over the border, which I don't know in any stretch of any imagination somebody could connect those dots in with any sort of high degree of certainty. I think that it's unfortunate and it's sad that firearms are being used illegally in Mexico to commit crimes. I don't think anybody is for that, but to somehow trace the firearms back to, Glock and say you didn't regulate the distributor who sold your Glock 19 that ended up in Mexico at this crime scene. That's not how the gun manufacturers don't regulate guns, right? Like the federal government does. So I don't know how this proceeds, other than I think it's more of a kind of a conversation starter that people want to bring up and try to. I don't think there's any idea that this will be successful, but it certainly has people talking, and we're talking about it. So, what's your take on this?
I think this is pretty ridiculous. I mean, you've covered it, I think, pretty well. Somehow it is Smith & Wesson, Barrett Firearms, Colt, Glock, and Ruger's fault that Mexico has this issue with gun running over their border. Versus maybe we just have an issue with an unsecure border with a country like Mexico that has problems with these drug cartels, whole parts of their country where the government doesn't run those parts of that country, right? Where the cartels are the ones that are in charge, and local law enforcement are on the payroll of the cartels, right? Maybe we have more of a problem with that kind of thing. Okay, so maybe the U.S. has a problem with lackadaisically letting people in across our border to our side, but Mexico could crack down if they really wanted to. But the problem is they have cartels that have a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of resources and a lot of control along the border. So it would be an all-out war for them to try to get that under control, and that's a war they don't want to have. They'd rather let things kind of stay in a somewhat controlled, like sometimes this is, and I'm not saying this is the right approach. I'm just saying that this is sometimes how it works in the real world. You have a situation where this by the way, this example, this has happened in some of our major cities in the US, where mobs and gangs have had control over whole sections of cities. Okay, where it's almost easier and less pain to just let them continue running things in those jurisdictions, right? Because if law enforcement and the government tries to step in and take over and crack down on those gangs and mobs, or in this case, drug cartels in Mexico, like, it's going to be all out war. And that will disrupt things more, at least in the short term, and potentially in the long term, than if they just let the status quo remain. Again, I'm not saying that's the right approach. I'm just saying that's the reality. So Mexico has a problem, and that's their problem. It's not our problem. Well, we could work together with Mexico, and Mexico could do a lot better job of trying to keep people from crossing the border as well. But they don't care. They're like, oh, sweet, all these people. And by the way, lots of people coming into Mexico from other countries that Mexico's like, sweet, let them go to the U.S. Not our problem, right? And conversely, people are able to go over the border into Mexico pretty easily if they really want to. So now another interesting thing here to note, Matthew, and it's not covered in this article, but they basically are hitting the top manufacturing companies with this lawsuit, minus Sig Sauer. That's interesting. Guess who is in negotiations right now for a major contract with the Mexican government?
Sig Sauer.
Sig Sauer. Maybe they don't want to rock the boat there. I did hear from a source that Sig Sauer is being contacted by people saying, hey, maybe you should reconsider doing business with Mexico with this contract because of what they're doing to other U.S.-based manufacturers. I don't think that's an invalid thing to suggest. So does Sig love money more than they love principle in this case? I don't know. I guess we will find out. I say that fully being a self-described, I never say this, but I'm a Sig fanboy, okay? I have a lot of friends at Sig. I carry Sigs. I shoot Sigs. I like Sigs. I like some of these other guns too, but Sigs are that's what I'm carrying on me right now. But this is that's an interesting data point that stood out to me, that, interesting that they're not coming after Sig. Interesting that they are conveniently pursuing a contract there. Anyway, moving on. Everytown sues Polymer 80 Inc. on behalf of 2 wounded LA Sheriff's Department deputies. So this goes back to that very unfortunate, terrible act of violence against 2 LA Sheriff's deputies a few months back that were shot in an ambush. Right, they were attacked. They were parked in their vehicle outside a bus station in Compton and approached by a man and shot. Apparently that man, it says here, was shot. He used an AR pistol built from a Polymer 80 kit. That was news to me. I hadn't heard that before. So Everytown for gun safety is representing and on behalf of the 2 wounded LA County Sheriff's deputies suing the Nevada-based manufacturer, Mrd-L-E, because here's their claim. They purposefully sold their products without markings to make it difficult for law enforcement to trace the firearm. Except here's the problem with that. A Mrd-L-E kit is not a firearm. Now, the ATF would love to make it such. They're working pretty hard to change the definition of what a firearm is. But a Mrd-L-E is not a firearm. It's a chunk of plastic. It still requires manufacturing to take place to convert it into a firearm. Go online and Google sometime homemade firearms, like and enter random countries' names like Mexico, Philippines, Venezuela, etc., and see how crafty people can be with making homemade firearms. And then just recognize that no matter what you do, criminals will be criminals. Criminals will obtain and will build weapons of all sorts to commit their crimes with. The company's not at fault here. Criminals are at fault. Oh, they sell these kits, these products without markings intentionally to make it difficult for law enforcement to trace. Tracing occurs after the fact of the commission of a crime. It does very little to prevent the crime from happening in the first place. Just a thought.
Yeah. I mean, you pointed out the fact that they're not selling firearms. And so this is one of those, I don't see how this proceeds like successfully for Everytown. And I think a lot of this is posturing and just kind of positioning for kind of putting pressure on, different people that may be able to pass legislation or influence decision-making within regulatory bodies that, and have an end around way of creating legislation that bans or redefines certain things. And I think all this stuff is more of that rather than they believe that this will, somehow win in court. But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I'll try to keep you updated if that case progresses. KAKE.com. This is a Wichita, Kansas news station. Reports concealed carry applications more than doubled in Kansas this year amid pandemic. Give us your take on this story, Matthew.
Yeah. So it says Schmidt, he is, I believe, the sheriff deputy, or I'm sorry, attorney general. Between July 1st, 2020 and June 30th, 2020, concealed carry licensing unit received 7,700 new applications. That was more than double the amount of applications received the previous fiscal year. So that's pretty telling. That's an interesting increase, right? When it doubles. Part of this was obviously the pandemic played part of this. They also changed the requirements for getting a concealed carry license in Kansas. They reduced the age to 18. That might have played a part, but overwhelmingly, and this is seen, obviously throughout the industry, not just concealed carry licenses, but gun purchases, training across the country, is the pandemic, the rioting, the police kind of defunding, talking about defunding and withdrawing, and police not being able to be as proactive, and all this stuff has caused a lot of people to say, I want to be able to defend myself. And so, this is crazy. And this is just Kansas, but I'm sure that this is repeated across the country for those states that, that issue concealed carry permits. But I think it'd be easy to say, oh, well, this is just a one-off, but you Riley probably have the numbers more than I would, but concealed carry classes, advanced training, I've seen anecdotally more people just wanting individual training, advanced training outside of concealed carry training than I have in the previous years by, manyfold. And so I think that this is just a result of people wanting to feel more comfortable, confident, and protected in their own personal protection, taking that responsibility on themselves.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I mean, I recognize that Kansas isn't a large population state, but this was a year's time of data. They received 7,717 new applications. That was statewide. That's more than double what they received the previous year. I just decided to pull up. This is just interesting to me, right, Matthew? But the last year, well, actually, this is for the year 2020. Just to put this in perspective, the state of Colorado had or issued 59,526 permits. You can find those statistics on the Colorado Bureau of Investigation website. They don't issue the permits, the county sheriffs do, but the county sheriffs have to send background check info to the state. So that's how the state tracks how many numbers, how many people, or how many permits were issued, or how many permits were they, I should say it was 59,087 is actually what they found to be eligible to receive handgun permits. 187 applicants were denied. That's actually quite remarkable if you do the numbers on that, the percentages, how many people applied and like how many people were actually prohibited persons.
Mm-hmm.
It's very few. Funny how that works. Criminals are generally self-policing in terms of, if I'm a criminal, I'll just carry my gun concealed, regardless of what the government says. They're not out there applying for permits. Anyway, we've seen an uptick for sure over the last year. It's coming, it kind of ebbs and flows, right? I would say right now it's been down in terms of concealed carry classes a little bit compared to a few months ago. So, it ebbs and flows. There's definitely an uptick in people wanting to get permits last year, but there was a stretch there where it was kind of difficult to do because COVID restrictions, not being able to do classes quite so much or with as great of numbers, and county sheriff's offices being shut down, therefore not processing permits quite as efficiently as what they normally would have. So, it's been an interesting year, but there's definitely been an uptick. And now the other thing that they surmised is that that it probably actually will continue or maybe even increase because Kansas recently reduced the age to 18. That an 18-year-old can apply for a concealed carry permit in Kansas now as well. So they'll probably see an influx of 18 to 20-year-olds applying for permits.
Yep.
Moving on to our first. Actually, you know what? Let's do this. Let's cover the Los Angeles Police Department story, Matthew.
Cool.
And I'll leave the Canik story for you. Los Angeles Police Department selects the FN 509 Mrd-L-E as new duty pistol. And this is kind of we'll call it a new variation of the FN 509. They came out with the MRD. This is classified as the Mrd-LE. MRD just means that it's optics ready, okay, an FYI. But the FN 509 pistol, it's a great pistol. I tested one for several months a few years back and found it to be a very serviceable, reliable, accurate, good shooting pistol. I liked it. I liked shooting it. I thought it was a pretty solid gun. It ran well. It had a decent trigger, not a great trigger, but a decent one. That's all it really needs for a duty pistol, I'll be honest. So apparently the LAPD did this contract competition, if you will. They evaluated a number of different guns. They did a 20,000 round count endurance qualification. The FN 509 surpassed that with 0 malfunctions, it said. Now, they didn't say what other guns were up for, that were also um, considered for this new contract. They just say that the FN 509 had 0 malfunctions in the 20,000 round test. The LAPD has roughly 10,000 uniformed officers. So this is a large department. Obviously, we all know that. We understand that. That's a bunch. So this is a huge contract for FN America, as they are officially known now. They used to be FNH USA, but a few years ago they changed the company name to FN America. The FN 509, like I said, is a great pistol. Now they have the MRD series, and that's the other exciting thing with an agency as large as LAPD, is this is optics ready. So that tells you that the LAPD is being forward thinking in this acquisition. And I assume they will be either issuing or giving officers the option or ability to add optics to their pistols, which I think is a positive note. So, one thing that's really cool about the FN, I just got a text, by the way, guys, in case you're wondering, from Matthew. He disappeared out of the feed and he said that he lost power, that they have a storm where they're at. So that happens sometimes. So I'll just continue solo unless he's able to get his power back up. One cool thing about the MRD, their mounting system for the FN 509 is it's a very solid mounting system from what I've seen. It uses a unique adapter plate, essentially, that with a bunch of different options for the different common popular optics out there. And it's a very solid mounting solution for an OEM mounting solution. So that's a positive note. It's far superior from what I've seen compared to the Glock MOS system, and I would imagine Glock was involved in this procurement for a new pistol, and I would suspect that, I don't know this for sure, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if the evaluation of Glock MOS compared to the FN MRD system was found to be severely lacking. So anyway, pretty interesting stuff. Seeing FN get a big contract like that, that's probably, I think, I'm positive that's the largest law enforcement agency that has awarded a contract to FN like that. So that's a big deal. So congrats to FN America on winning this huge contract. And what I think the other, like, the positive net results or benefits from this are that means more FN pistols out there. We start seeing more pistols like this in the hands of our law enforcement. They usually are going to end up more in the hands of citizens because people will see them, they'll be interested in them, they'll be more inclined to buy more of them. So we'll see more options and features and aftermarket support and holsters and things for a pistol like the FN 509. So if I'm not mistaken, Mark I know is watching from California. I don't think the FN 509 is on the state approved list. So there is a bit of irony there in that the agency can buy the FN 509, but you as a civilian cannot. Yeah, you need to do something about changing that law in the state of California. Anyway, moving on. All right, so let's go to Matthew's still gone, still no power. So I'm going to do the story that Matthew was going to do. He actually wrote this up just yesterday, or published today, actually. Canik releases new enhanced METE line of semi-auto handguns. This is according to concealedcarry.com. This was just announced yesterday. And so Canik pretty popular now manufacturer of handguns like the TP9, TP9 SFX or SFX, and the TP9 SFT, and a few other models. TP9 has been quite popular. I actually just shot on a squad this last weekend at the USPSA Area 1 Championships with a shooter running the TP9 SFX, I believe. And so, yeah, pretty cool little gun. Based in Turkey, Century Arms USA is the company here that imports those and sells those pistols here in the US for us. Anyway, they have just announced the new Canik METE. That is METE, but apparently it's pronounced METE or METE or whatever, which is named after METE Khan, who was a famous ruler that would have encompassed the Turkish region way back like 2,000, almost 2,200 years ago. And so apparently they wanted to honor him in calling this pistol after his name. That was an interesting thing. I wasn't particularly familiar with him, and even Matthew includes a little history lesson in his article here. He says the pistol is named after Mete Khan, who ruled the Xiongnu Empire. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, probably not. Until 174 BC, after ordering his men to kill his father in 209 BC. And I was like, okay, I got to look this up. I got to research this a little bit more because that's rather interesting. And so I was like, plus, like, you want to honor a dude that killed his father? Well, apparently, if you dig back in the history lesson books, Mete Khan's father, who was the ruler, the king, the emperor, whatever at that time for that region, he actually he did not want his son Mete to ascend to the throne after him. He wanted the son of one of his other wives to become the next ruler of the kingdom. And he actually sent his son Mete to another part of the kingdom where he then, or to another region, and then apparently sent his army there to like engage in battle with the hopes that his son would be killed in the process or something like that. So Mete Khan eventually, like, realizing his father didn't like him, wanted to kill him, wanted to get rid of him, he actually killed his father to take over the kingdom. Anyway, things were ugly and rather rough back then. Still are, but interesting, sometimes the origins of where we, or us human beings, came from. So the METE series, they have the SFX and the SFT model. The two models are very similar. The SFT model is a 1/2 inch longer slide and barrel. It's a 5.2 inch barrel. It's actually quite long. And the SFX is a 4.47 inch barrel. They've redesigned the beaver tail portion of the grip from the older TP9 series to make it a little bit more ergonomic. They also gave the trigger guard a double undercut, which just helps you get your support hand up a little bit higher and in better contact with the gun. The trigger is essentially the same from what I could see. The sights are similar, but they apparently have a reversed angle. How do you describe it? And how does Matthew write it here? But anyway, the rear sight has a double. No, see, not that. Where is it? Come on, Matthew. I wish he was here to help me out. The sights. The rear sight has a forward angle. There we go. That works. That makes sense. To accommodate one-handed slide manipulations, I would say that's always appreciated. The pistol also has Canik's optic ready cut, which is compatible with a number of optics, and they have adapter plates and different things. So that's great in today's world. I think that's what you got to do. And I think in today's world where we are now, I think more and more pistol manufacturers, when they release a new gun, they just need to release it optics ready. And we need to get away from this, whole idea of release a pistol that's just iron sights and then sometime later release the optics ready version. Just release it with optics ready. Like, that should be the standard here going forward. SIG originally released the P365 non-optics ready, and then a year or two later, released the optics ready version. Springfield with the Hellcat released both basically the same time, but they had the iron sight only and the optics ready versions, both available. I suppose that's not that big a deal, but it's far simpler just to have an optics ready pistol. If you don't want to use an optic, fine. Have an adapter plate that fills in that space like the Canik here does. You look at it, yeah, there's a couple of screws there holding the plate in place. Maybe aesthetically it's not as pleasing to some people, but I just say, who cares, right? Give people the options. And the future, I think, is pistols are going to have optics. So it's time to embrace that. They increased the aggressiveness of the texture of the grip. That's always a good thing, I think, by the way. Grip texture is huge in terms of being able to grip and control and shoot a gun accurately fast. So that's a good thing. And the magwell has been flared slightly. I think that's also an improvement as well. And then it says there's this holster fit and lock system, and so like the frame or the grip module of the pistol has like these little indented squares near kind of where your index finger would go when you are indexed off the trigger. And supposedly that has something to do with a retention holster that Canik has designed or is involved with. I don't know what exactly that looks like. I think that's somewhat intriguing. Having a point on the pistol that retains or works with retention of holster versus just the trigger guard. So that's kind of an interesting take. Let's see, any other notable features? I think that's the big stuff. It did say that the sights, the iron sights that come on the pistol are 3-dot. Man, I'd love to see that kind of thing go away. 3-dot is not where it, like, just give me a front dot and a rear notch. That's all you need. And for those of you that think you need 3 dots, come to a class sometime. All right. And let's learn how to shoot and shoot fast. And you'll quickly learn that having 3 dots can just sometimes confuse what you visually see. Now, it probably works for some people, but because I shouldn't say one way is the highway for every person. But I would say, generally speaking, you just need a high contrast front sight to sit somewhere in a rear notch. That's all you need. We don't need 3 dots. Anyway, pistol comes with an IWB. It's a convertible IWB and an IWB and OWB holster. So inside waistband and outside waistband holster. Cleaning kit, tool kit, takedown tool, and the gun ships with 2 magazines, a 20 rounder and an 18 rounder. Except for to some of you magazine capacity limited states, I would imagine. So pretty cool. New pistol from Canik. Let's go to our last story of the day. And we might just have to skip. Oh, wait, maybe I do have that info. Okay, I was going to say, might have to skip the giveaway winner because Matthew usually has that info, but it looks like we have it here in the show notes for today. Guns.com reports that a new Camber pistol is coming, apparently to be released or announced on August 19th. That's in about a week. And we don't have all the details, but that's just kind of, it's interesting to talk about what might be coming. They have dropped some breadcrumbs, it says, over the last couple of weeks about the new model. They have said that it sounds like it's expected to be lightweight, reliable right out of the gate. That would be a good thing for Camber. More sight options. This is according to little nuggets that the company president has mentioned on at various points. And let's see. More sight options, more optic options, more capacity. All right. And then he says, stay tuned because you're about to get a lot more than you expected. So, and then according to them, that it says basically the hint here is that it's expected to be a fairly compact carry gun with a 10 to 12 round capacity that's easy to conceal and able to mount an optic on a cut slide. So there you go. That is what it looks like. It sounds like Camber's trying to get into the P365 Springfield Hellcat game. No surprise there necessarily. Everybody wants in on that game because they've seen how well those pistols have sold. So I'll be curious to see what Camber's take on this new pistol is, if it's going to be truly something unique and different and innovative, or if it's going to be more of a copycat of the P365, which essentially established this whole market. So that's all the news stories we have today, guys. We will have to forego Matthew's product review or gear review. I'll give you mine, and then we're over time, so I'll try to be brief. But today I am reviewing the Garmin. So preface here. I am doing something a little bit non-typical today. It's not necessarily a gun-related product, but I think it's one that many of my friends out there would appreciate. So this is the Garmin Phoenix 6X Pro smartwatch. I didn't want to get a smartwatch for a long time. I didn't want another connected device riding on my wrist, just adding more distraction to my life. For a while, I had these Garmin watches on my radar because they're not like some of the other smartwatches like Samsung and Apple offers that, gives you all these widgets and applications and you can do all the same things on your watch as you can on your phone. I didn't want that. I just wanted a watch, but maybe with some additional features. So the Garmin watches, and particularly, I don't know how all the Garmin watches work, but I'll speak specifically to the Phoenix 6X Pro. But this connects to my phone, and it does pass through notifications that I choose it to. In this case, I only have it to pass through phone calls and text messages. I don't have any social media or anything like that, or emails coming through to my watch. So, phone calls and text messages get priority in my life because the people that know me personally are going to be the ones that call or text me. So I appreciate that. I see those notifications and I can actually read those text messages right there on the phone or on the watch and go, okay, cool. And make a quick determination of whether that's important enough for me to pick up my phone and respond to, or wait till a little bit later. But the big thing is I've been working really hard this year to get more into physical shape. So I wanted something that could also track my health statistics, heart rate, respiration rate, sleep patterns, movement, physical activity, all these things. And this watch does an excellent job in that regard. Has, top of the line, state of the art sensors for tracking things like your heart rate and respiration rate. Does a great, it's almost witchcraft to me how this thing can track my sleep patterns. I'm like, first of all, what sensors are in there that really tell it when I'm truly asleep and when I'm in REM sleep, rapid eye movement versus deep sleep versus light sleep, et cetera, et cetera. But it's given me a lot of insight into my sleep patterns and what my health looks like from a perspective of the rest that I'm getting. What else? I mean, it's been a phenomenal tool. I appreciate the fact that you can customize the watch face. So I added this more analog looking watch face to it because that's the style I like. A lot of the watches I've owned in the past. In fact, here's one right here that I probably still occasionally will put on my wrist. But here's a analog watch that I really like. I like the analog look. So kind of a classic styling mixed with today's modern technology. It's water resistant, plenty well. Like I've gone swimming with this, take showers, whatever. I don't worry about damaging the watch because I get it wet or I hop in the pool. Yeah, I mean it's just a really really cool watch. Not inexpensive, that's for sure. Oh, I mean not to mention the built-in GPS features. Okay. So I've used this on a couple of hikes. Really, really cool to just have GPS right there on my wrist, tracking the whole hike. being able to see terrain and other features. It has built-in trails and roads and everything for all of North America, to a high level of detail. Very easy to use and to navigate in that way. Very accurate from what I could see. I've used it to go on, runs, on jogs, bike rides, walks around the park. I use it to track my physical activity when I do my daily workouts. It just has so many options. I even used it to play a couple of rounds of golf with my brother a month or two ago, which was really cool. Like, where it just gave me a readout. It knew exactly where I was on each hole and gave me a readout of the distance to the next hole. So really, really cool features, tons of features. I couldn't be happier with it, actually. So now Garmin does make some more tactical oriented watches, including ones that have ballistic calculators in them. They're a bit more expensive, and also something that are probably more useful for guys that spend a lot of time shooting long distance precision rifle stuff. And I think that's the Tactics Delta and Tactics Charlie models. But this is the Phoenix 6X Pro. I really like it. I highly recommend it. If you're looking for a smartwatch that can track all the important metrics in your life without bothering you with a ton of busyness and notifications and such, then I'd recommend you check it out. Christopher on Facebook asks how much, and I think this retails. Well, right now you can pick it up for about $600 on Amazon. I got mine a bit cheaper. I managed to find a temporary sale, and was able to pick it up for a bit cheaper than that. So that was great. So that's my gear review, the Garmin Phoenix 6X Pro. Well, guys, before we let you go, we do need to announce this week's weekly prize winner. We do the weekly giveaway. You got to go get signed up each week at concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. And next week, by the way, we're going to give away a package of, I think it's 5 or 6 rounds that comes in a pack. We're going to give you 9mm dummy ammo, and I don't have mine handy right here, but we just got dummy ammo back in stock. It's something that's been hard to get since the COVID pandemic began due to some supplier issues. But we're really excited to have our dummy ammo back in stock. We are now branding our own dummy ammo from Ready Up Gear. So that's pretty cool and exciting to see. Check out our 9mm dummy ammo on our website, concealedcarry.com, and order some if you've been looking for some. Very reasonably priced. I think it's actually the best priced dummy ammo that you'll find anywhere in the market, at least from the price comparisons I've done. A lot cheaper than like those aluminum ones that are coated with red coating that like flakes off and wears off and things like that. Very, very nice dummy ammo that's got a polymer tip and polymer base in the primer pocket. So those of you that are concerned about dry fire, you can use our dummy ammo and it works great. It's going to protect your firearm as well. So that's the prize next week. Don't forget to sign up at concealedcarry.com/podcast prize. Today's winner, though, that I'm announcing is getting a Palm pepper spray unit. So really cool prize, very useful prize. It's a great tool to have some form of less lethal on your belt or in your pocket. And the Palm pepper spray units are fantastic for that purpose. They're low profile. They're not obnoxious or overly large in any way. But they're also very effective. They pack a good punch. They're recommended by people in the industry that I trust. So the winner for a Palm pepper spray unit is Michael M. Congrats to Michael. You will be contacted via email to get your shipping info, and we'll get one of those shipped to you right away. The one downside is if you happen to be in a jurisdiction where that's not legal for us to ship to, we may have to find a substitute prize, but chances those are pretty far and few in between. So chances are, Michael, you'll be able to get your Palm pepper spray unit. So congrats, Michael, on winning the Palm pepper spray. Guys, don't forget to sign up for the weekly giveaway at concealedcarry.com/podcast prize for a chance next week to win a pack of 9mm dummy ammo. So with that, let's sign on out of here and let you go. I believe Jacob and I will be back on later today for another episode. So until then, a reminder to train right, train often, and train safe so you can fight hard, fight fast, and fight true. Take care.